they give you a burn time. So like they'll be like, good morning, today the burn time is 2 minutes and you should stay out of the sun between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m.
All right.
So,
We'll go ahead and get started, if it's cool. What are we doing? So today is going to make, in my opinion, a lot more sense than yesterday because we're going to actually have interactions. We're going to change state, and then that state, when it changes, the UI is going to magically update, right? So this is where React kind of shines. So here's the clone we're making. This should look familiar. So we already did this in vanilla JavaScript. So it'll be interesting to see how you now do the same things you had to do before, but in React. So here, toggle the box. We click and we change, the CSS of the box, the background color. But this is going to be controlled by a piece of state. So mirror. We type in an input box and we see it mirrored. This will be an on-change event listener you'll need to do to make this work. Counter, you'll need an on-click again and some state. But counter, right away, you should notice how much better this is doing in React than vanilla JavaScript. How much you'll start to appreciate, hopefully, React when you hit counter. And then race, you are going to listen for a key event. So I don't remember specifically what the event listener is, probably key down, but you might have to play with that a bit. Stopwatch. So the old project for the previous cohort was really difficult, and I changed it for this cohort, but it used to involve a lot of timers, and your project tomorrow is not going to involve timers. So I would rather you treat this as a super bonus and do the cloner first before you do this. Not because this isn't good information, it's just information that you don't specifically need for this week, for this project. So try to do cloner first, because cloner is really pertinent information. This will be great practice for the project coming up. So any questions on the overview today, the assignment? All right, so I refactored Dragons just a little bit. I made it kind of simpler. So to recap, right? In React, we have something called state. And what's the special thing about React state? When it changes, what happens, Lin-Jay? So what's special about React state?
You mean like the use state there?
Just in general, like what is unique about state in React? So
I'm not sure on the exact answer. Sorry.
Yeah, so when the state in React changes, what happens? Farhan?
It updates, so in the React, it's going to be re-rendered if it's changed, so to speak.
The component will re-render, correct? That's more of a technical answer, but the page will be updated, right? So it'll be as if you change a variable like let x equals 5 and you see the 5 on the screen and you change that to 6 and you didn't do anything and it just appears as a 6. So that's what's very special about React state. So how do we change state in React? There's only one way we're ever allowed to change state in React. Farhan?
We use the second value, the set in the state variables that we created. In this case, like dragons, it would be set dragons.
Yeah, we can only ever use the setter function we get from calling useState. So we can never do something like this. Right? So that's state. In our application yesterday, it didn't really make sense because we never changed state. So we didn't see the beauty of React. We just kind of did the work without really getting any of the benefit. Today, that's going to obviously change. And then here, what's going on here, right? So we use the map function. And the map function you can call on any array. And it applies a callback function to each item of the array to return a new array. So here for every dragon object, oh, and here I simplified our state too. So our default state, because what goes in useState as the argument is just the default. It gets the party started. But this is the whole point is that this changes, right? Actually, this is going to be called dummy data because we're using it to develop this app. But at the end of the app, we're going to delete it. And users will be able to just enter a dragon. So map iterates through the array and returns a new array. And for each item, it calls this function and does whatever the function says, right? And in this case, we're just returning a div. So at the end of the day, this code right here is it's gonna just be like an array. And this array will contain what? What is each one of these? Well, not objects. What is each one of these arrays gonna contain from this map function? Like, what will this code resolve to? Is my question, I guess. Any guesses? Open to class because it's tough.
The value?
The value of what? First off, it's going to be an array because map always returns an array. But what is each item in the array?
The value of object.
Yeah, somebody said it. The divs. So it's going to be these little. This is really hard to show, but I don't know. I can't. It's hard to show, but it's going to be this whole div in here.
Well, it's shown in a spec.
What's that?
Well, it's shown in a spec.
So with all this stuff in there, right? Just picture that. An array of these divs. Yeah, so that's what map is doing. And that's all the code. That's everything from yesterday. And then some styling stuff. But styling hasn't really changed, right? The only thing different is when we want to use class, we have to now use class name in JSX. Yeah, so pretty simple. Any questions on the stuff from yesterday?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Sure.
So there's a lot of nested curly braces in that.
Yeah.
Curly brackets. So what's the best way to think about this? So I need curly brackets in order to do JavaScript code. And then the first time I hit an HTML element, then I have to, it's kind of like exiting out of it. And then I have to use curly brackets again.
Yeah, so this is the complication.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the complication comes in that the curly braces have so many different meanings. So what's the first meaning on line 27 of the curlies? What does that curly brace do?
Then I want to do JS.
Yeah, inject JavaScript when you're in JS. Yeah. Inject JavaScript when you're in JSX. Yeah, that's the first curly. What's the second curly doing still on line 27?
So that's the function definition, or where the function block.
Yeah, the second curly is just our normal code block. So that's like the curly just to designate a code block in JavaScript. And then And then the curly on line 29, is that injecting back into JavaScript? I don't even know. Or is that just syntax of key value?
I don't know, because I thought the syntax was going to be the backticks and then the dollar sign and then the curly braces again, curly brackets.
Yeah.
But so that's new to me. I don't know. I guess that's my problem. I don't know what that is there. What are we doing there? Is that telling? I felt like we were already doing JS because of the brackets on 27, but now we're needing them again.
Because right here, as soon as we use JSX again, it switches back to JSX land.
Oh, okay. So every time we hit a HTML element inside the return, then it's kind of toggles it, and we need to toggle back again in order to do any additional JS code. Is that the way to think about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to clean up your language though, just a little bit. It's not HTML. It looks like HTML, but it's JSX, right?
JSX. Okay.
Yeah. But it definitely looks like HTML. So yeah, line 29. Same thing. So it's injecting from JSX to JavaScript because we want to refer to dragon.id. And then the closing curly brace, we're back in JSX land with class name. And then same thing here, injecting some JavaScript.
So I've got another question. I mean,
Sure.
obviously this works, but if on line 27 we're saying use JS code here, then how are we able to return JSX elements inside a JS? I don't know what you call it, brackets.
So because we're using React library, we're able to return JSX from functions. So that's what a React so that's a good reminder, right? What is a React component? So David, what is a React component?
It's something that returns JSX.
A function that returns JSX, or it's a little hard because you weren't here yesterday, but
yeah, I forgot the other part.
So you guys know though, right? It returns JSX or what?
Another React component.
Or another React function, which returns, or another React component. And that component has to return JSX or another React component. So eventually someone's returning some JSX, right? There are a lot of curly braces. The syntax is ugly. I agree. But that's what's going on there. Any other questions? Okay, so what?
One more.
Sure.
I've got one question. At the very top, the first line, what does that do? The client, line number 1. Use client.
Okay. So in Next.js, we're responsible for where our code runs. And where our code runs, we mean where can the JavaScript execute? And what are our two options for where JavaScript can run?
Server.
Yeah, either the server or the client. And in Next.js, we have to we have to be cognizant of where our JavaScript is running and where we want it to run. So use client is a directive to Next.js to run the JavaScript on the client. Because our application is going to work by JavaScript running on both of these computers, at the same time and back and forth is going to be how our real full stack application is going to function. Anytime we need user interaction, has to run on the client, which makes sense, right? Because if your client is sitting there with the phone is the one who has to process that interaction. The server can't. The server already responded, and they're playing with the code they got from the server. So this is just a very, very introduction to the idea of full stack applications. And this whole week is all going to be client. But even next week, I think is all going to be client as well. But we're going to start talking more about making requests to the server and in the back end. But right now, it's all just client we can think of. Other questions? Okay, so for this Dragon app, all I want to do is add, what do I want? I want enter name. So I want add a new dragon. And I want a name. And I want an emoji. And that's it. Add dragon button. So this is what I want to build today. I'm not going to snip it and take a picture because it's pretty simple, right? I think but this is what this is our goal for today, right? What we're trying to build. So let's get that first objective. How can I just get the add a new dragon to appear on my website? Below here, I want add a new dragon. Maureen? Yeah, I just want this word, add a new dragon sentence right here.
Our code.
What?
Our code in H.
H?
No, it has to be up. Up like this. It has to be down or up.
I just want the text that says add a new dragon below here.
Yeah, it has to be inside that div. Yeah.
Okay.
H1, yeah.
Okay.
Then add a new.
Okay. That's fine. I don't agree that it has to be in the div, but it can be though. But yeah, either's fine. Here's the thing though. Add a new dragon is going to be responsible for these two inputs and handling this input. So I'd kind of like to make a new component to do this. So to do that, I'm going to create a new folder in source called components. And I'm going to make a new file called newdragon.jsx. And here right now, I just want a React component that returns an H1 or returns a div with the text new dragon. So how can I make a new React component that returns a div with the text new dragon? Semsi?
Yeah, we can start with the function, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then name it new dragon if you want.
Sure.
Okay. My brain just switches to JS unintentionally. Okay, and then we could open up curly braces.
The parentheses first, yeah.
Yeah. And then open up
Curly braces, yeah.
And we could create, so we need state, I believe.
You're thinking too far ahead. So let's just do this little objective. So I just want to return a div with the text of new dragon.
Okay, so use the keyword return. And then you could use a div, and inside the div, you can put a p tag.
Oh, yeah, I just said a div, but
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so how do I get new dragon to show up? So right now that text isn't showing up, new dragon. How can I get that text?
You would have to import it here.
Yeah.
New new dragon. But here you could just add it with caret, like left caret, and then
Yeah, this is called a left angle bracket. Yep.
yeah, and new dragon.
Yeah, and then I'm going to use auto import, press tab. So up top, oh, did it not auto import for me?
You guys didn't export it.
Oh, yeah. What did I forget to do?
Export. Yeah.
Yeah. So now when I type this, I can auto import it. So up here. And then I see new dragon. Awesome. So now this new dragon component will be responsible for building all this. Okay, so instead of new dragon, I said I wanted like an H2 that says add a new dragon. That's fine. Okay, now how do I get this input box where a user can enter the name of a new dragon? Calypso?
You need to add a form to the page.
Okay.
So, yeah, form action. On submit.
Thinking too far ahead, but eventually,
sorry.
yeah. But
so then,
this is our goal.
Okay, so then, oh man, form input type text.
Yeah.
And then another input type for the second box, I think. And then a button type for submit.
Very nice. And how do I get the text to actually say enter name, enter emoji in there? Calypso?
I think if you just put it next to it, maybe. I'm not sure about
I mean,
part exactly.
You probably could enter name, but you wouldn't want to. But I guess you could.
Could you put it where it says text or no? That wouldn't. No,
yeah, there's an attribute specifically for this to get text to appear.
Yeah, that one.
Yep, someone shouted it out. Linjay, placeholder. Okay. So enter name.
And then enter emoji.
Yeah.
And then on the button, you could put submit between the brackets, so it says submit.
Beautiful. Or I guess we wanted add dragon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our whole objective, right? Visually. Now the thing is, in React, when we use inputs, we want to use something called controlled inputs. Did I give you guys pre-work on controlled inputs? I hope so. No? I think I did. Anyway, does anyone know what a controlled React input is? I'm pretty sure I did. No? Okay. So we need to manually keep track of what our user is typing in. So basically every keystroke we need to save. Every keystroke we need to save what they're typing in React state. So when the user types in a name here, I don't know a dragon's name. I don't know.
Liz.
What did you say?
Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. Yeah.
That was the first. Oh, is that how you knew it? Because it was the first result.
No, because I love that cartoon.
That's a weird coincidence. Okay. So as your user types the T in toothless, you want to somehow save this in a state in React. So first off, we need to create some state to store what the user is typing in for name. So let's do that maybe first. How can I create some state to store the name of the new dragon they're typing in?
Name, set name.
Yeah, so const, square brackets, name, set name, And this is going to be a new piece of state, right? So we're going to call use state, auto import that. And then since I'm using state, I have to tell Next.js this code should run on the client. What's the default argument for state?
Maxwell, I have a question real
Sure.
quick. Is this new Dragon component considered a child of the main page component, or are they siblings?
Child of the home component.
The home component. So I guess my question is, should state exist in this new, like if our end goal is to have the new Dragon we're entering to have a new box on the display, would we want to set the state inside the new Dragon component or on the parent component eventually? Like
It depends. It depends. Yeah.
Okay,
on who needs access to all of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. For this app, it probably could be lowered, but it's fine how it is. Yeah. Okay. What's a good initial value for name? Yeah, it's going to be an empty string, right? Because that's what it should be initially. So now as the user types in this input box, I want to save everything they're typing. But how can I, as the user types in this box, how can I fire a function? Maybe let's just say our objective is as they type in this box, we want to console.log the word typing. How can we accomplish that?
On change.
Yeah, so we have an attribute called, or a property called event listener called onChange. It will accept a callback function, but right now we'll just console.log typing. So as the user types, it's firing this function typing. But instead of seeing typing, I want to see what the user's typing. So this is going to be similar from vanilla JavaScript, right? How can we get access to what the user's typing, the value?
Target.value?
Yeah, so we get event for free, and then we need to take a look at event.target.value. So now we get what they're typing in. But I said for this to be a controlled component, controlled input, we want to save every keystroke. So how can I save what they're typing in name? I want to save what they're typing in name.
Set name.
Yeah, so we're going to do set name. And what value?
Name. e.target.bottom name.
Yeah, e.target.value. Now, to see if this is working, let's console.log name. What is name going to be initially, ZO2? What is the value of name initially when this application first starts?
So empty string.
Empty string, exactly, from here, dictated from here. And then as the user types a T, this function fires. And what is name now going to be, ZO2? Yeah, so let's try this. Let's refresh. I type a T. Oh, I didn't save this. Sorry. I refresh this. I type a T. And we got 2 empty strings and then 2 T's. So in development, React runs twice for whatever annoying reason. I think to practice unmounting and make sure everything's going well there. But anyway, so that's normal behavior. But that's why we see 2 of them. So then as our user types more, toothless, it's now recording the whole name. But now for this to be the gold star of a controlled input, we need one final property. Does anyone know what that is?
Is it the handler?
The handler's here, this onChange.
Is it value?
Yeah, so we need value equal to what?
Name.
Name. Yeah. So this kind of closes the loop. Let's refresh this. So now we have toothless. So now this is the gold star React controlled input. So this is how you're always going to do it. Questions on that?
So I did a tutorial and with the event handler thing, but he had it separated out from the input, like a whole separate function. So you want us to just do it the way you just did it in input? Is that the shorter version way?
No, there's no right answer here. So you can do it either way. Like I could abstract this out, and it would be the same. Usually when the code is very small, I'll do it inline anonymous. But you can certainly do it like this. And that would be the same thing. But since this code is so small, to me, it makes more sense just to do it inline. Yeah. But when it's a few lines of code, then I prefer it not anonymous. Yep. Good question. Okay, so we're going to, yeah, other questions?
In line 17, you said value. Could you call it anything you want? Or is that like the standard name value?
No, this is a property name value. Okay. We can't call it anything we want. No. Okay. And the value is weird. Like, so if we just set the value to Ritu, it will always be Ritu no matter what we do or type. So that's what the value property is. But since we're setting it to name and name is changing from here, that's why it works for us.
The E on line 16.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay, then for this input, we need to do the same thing. So we can copy these two lines. And what has to change here? Well, first off, what do we need? What new piece of state do we need? Pimpa. So we're keeping track of name, but what also do we need to keep track of?
Emoji?
Yeah. So I'm going to copy this piece of state, and what should I change this to be?
So change name to emoji. I said emoji.
Yeah. And should it still be an empty string to start?
Yes.
Yeah. And then what has to change on these two lines?
Name to emoji?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, emoji. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And value equals
emoji.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so now we're all set. We have two controlled inputs. So the user goes to type toothless and enters the emoji, right? And then they click add dragon, and the whole website refreshed actually, but nothing else happened. So what do we want to happen? We want toothless to be created in state to add another object here. But before we do that, how do we get a function to fire when we submit a form? How do we get a function to fire? Ketsurin?
Put on submit on the form.
Yeah, and here I'm going to do what Linjay was asking about. Use a named function. I'm going to call this handle submit. And then here I'm going to define handle submit. And let's just console.log submitting. So now when the user types something in and clicks add dragon, we saw submitting for a second, but then it disappeared. Because the page refreshed. So in the long ago, does anyone know why this is happening?
Because it's re-rendering, so we need to prevent that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the browser is when it submits a form, its default behavior is to refresh the page, and that's from long ago. for a style of coding we're not ever doing. So we need to prevent that default behavior, right? So we're going to go e.prevent default. So we try to enter some more information and now we see submitting. Nice. And it doesn't refresh the page. But now what do we want to do? How do we make a toothless object? So this is what our objects looks like. They have ID, name, and emoji. So how can we make one using whatever the user typed in, right? So what do we need to do here? Any ideas?
Set dragons.
Yeah, I think you're thinking. I think you're thinking too far ahead though. Let's just work on making the toothless object.
Do you have to render it?
Do we have to render it? Not right now. All I want is like, how do we make this new object that looks like one of these old ones?
Do we use the spread operator?
Yeah, we will use the spread. So maybe you guys want to skip to. I thought I would simplify it, but maybe you don't need to. So how do we update? Let's skip to the end goal. How do we update state with our new object? So what's the only way we can ever change state?
Set dragons.
So let's use set dragons, except what problem are we going to have? Set dragons is not defined because set dragons lives here in this other component. So how do we pass a variable or state from one component to another component?
Pass by pop.
Yeah, so we need to pass it by props. So how can we do that here?
Set dragon equals set dragon.
Yeah. And now magically this will exist in props. If I console.log props, I'm going to see an object with a property set dragons that's a function. And here what I can do is destructure the set dragons. Remember destructuring, right? So we're just grabbing the value we want. And now I have access to set dragons. Okay. Now that I have access to set dragons, how can I add our new toothless object to the old array?
Callback function inside set dragon.
No, we don't need to. Yeah.
Do we need to also pass in dragon?
Yeah. Well? So we also need access to the old dragon. So let's pass in that, right? And we have to pass that here as well. And so here now we have access to the old dragons. We can console.log them. I see what our error is. So I'm setting dragons to empty and then or to undefined. And then it's trying to undefined.map. Doesn't make any sense. So it's throwing an error. Okay, so I have access to the old dragons. I have access to set the dragons of the new I have access to update state with set dragons. How do I finally make a new array with all the old dragons, but also with the new dragon?
If you want, we can kind of do like const new object equals the thing we want, or const new dragon with the name and emoji as the key value pairs. So it'll be.
But then what else does a dragon have?
The ID.
Yeah. So how do we determine what the ID is going to be?
Would it be dragons.length +1?
Yeah, and this is just a little awful shortcut, right? For teaching purposes. You're not going to do this in any production app, but if we have time, we'll actually go back and use UUID, but it's looking like we might not have time. Okay, so we've made a new dragon object. So here, toothless. We add dragon, and we see we've made ID4 name toothless emoji. But now how do we get toothless in our state array of dragons?
So we use the setter.
Yep.
And in the setter, we want to start an array first.
Yes.
And then we use the spread operator for dragons so that we can take the meat out and then comma new dragon.
Exactly.
The object we just created.
Exactly. So we add toothless and we got toothless, right? We add Drogon. And we got Drogon. Questions on this?
So we have to make an array because we're using the .map function?
We have to use an array because we decided that our state is going to be an array of objects. Not all your state is going to be an array. We have an example of state that's not an array here. Our state here is strings.
But would it work if we didn't, does the map function works on objects, or is it
No.
because we set it as...
Dragons has to be an array for map to work here.
I have a question.
Sure.
So for dragons, the use state, how does it know that dragon is in dragons?
Dragon is in dragons.
Yeah, so like if you scroll down.
Wait, back
no,
here?
on the other, yeah, scroll down. See where it says like dragon.id. How does it know that it's dragons? Because it doesn't have the S. My brain doesn't understand why it knows.
So dragons is the array from state, and then we're mapping through, and we determine this name.
Got you. Okay.
This can just be like item or X.
Right. Okay. Yes.
We call that whatever we want, but dragon makes the most sense because that's what they are. Yeah, and then there's improvements you can do, right? Like it'll accept it probably if it's an empty string, which isn't ideal. It doesn't clear the input from the user after submission. So it's all stuff you can improve upon. Any other questions? We're pretty good on time, surprisingly.
So is Cloner still the super bonus, or is it going to be a project that we need to submit?
No, Cloner's still a bonus, but it's a good one. You should do it before stopwatch, maybe even before race.
When is it due?
Tomorrow, 1 p.m.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Or your 1 p.m.
One more question.
Sure.
So we're gonna be doing that one you just showed, the one with the number 1 and that we're cloning today. We're doing that right today.
This is the assignment today. Yeah.
Okay. So is it best to just make separate files for each of those, or
these should all be separate components? That would be ideal. So you'll have one component called box, maybe another component called mirror, counter, race.
And then we just import it into the page. Right?
Exactly. So here it would be like counter. Yep. counter, and then you probably would have maybe your HR, right? Yeah. And then race. Yeah, great question. This I didn't specifically show you, but you're going to have a piece of state, and that state is going to determine what class is visible. So that might be a little challenging because I haven't shown you that, but that's the hint, okay? Create a piece of state, and that state will determine. So like on this div, I can do class name equals, and then I can say something like is red ? And if that piece of state is true, I can say class name is red or it's white. So this kind of logic is what you're going to use for the first problem. Okay, so that's the hint.
Is red the state?
Yeah, so you'd create a piece of state here. Like, it just is red is the first thing that came to my mind, but yeah. And it's not even red, right? It's blue. So, but that's the idea. You create a piece of state. You somehow switch that state back and forth using an on-click. And then here, that piece of state will determine which class is active.
Are we able to use if statements in the JSX, or
No.
is it strictly ternary?
That's why you have to use. That's why we learned ternaries, because you can't use if statements here. It would be nice, but you can't.
But you can use them in the functions outside
Yes.
of that.
Outside of JSX, yes, you can use if. And that's also why we use map so much, because we can't use for here. Or else I would probably just use for of, right? Because I like it so much, but you don't have that option. Okay. I think you should be good for the assignment today. Any final questions?
Yeah, Max, is that super bonus worth an extra point, or is that just, for extra practice?
For extra practice. Yeah. Okay, rooms are open.